About 7 or 8 years ago, we were at a holiday party when the host grabbed my butt. It was clearly not an accidental graze because there was definitely a squeeze. I turned in horror, and he observed to his friend that what he did was, quote, probably not good. I scooped up my spouse, and we left. After we climbed into the car, I shared what happened, explained that I wouldn't be in the same room with that man again, and I'm happy to report to you all that my life has been blissfully unwanted buttgrab free. The most ideal situation is not having entitled men grab women when they feel they'll get away with it. The second best outcome was mine. A partner who believed me and respected my desire not to be around someone I have deemed unsafe. But I do sometimes wonder if I should have made a bigger deal out of it, or sought to learn if this was his common course of conduct. I wondered how many other women also deem him unsafe. All of that came back to the surface as I dug into this case. Lieutenant Colonel Hilton seemed to have a familiarity with women that was both unearned and unwanted. Perhaps to him it was no big deal. He trained as a urologist, someone who saw sensitive areas all day. Perhaps to him a body was a body. But it sure mattered to the women whose bodily autonomy he ignored or overbore over the course of his tenure overseas. This is Conduct and Becoming. I'm Erin, and I'm your host. As you've probably gleaned, this episode will involve some discussion of sexual assault. That means this episode might not be for you. If that's the case, all good. Lieutenant Colonel William Hilton joined the Air Force in 2002 as a urologist. But his path to urology and the Air Force was a bit twistier. That is, Hilton joined the Army out of high school in about 1985. He served as a cavalry scout before later attending West Point. By the summer of 2020, he earned his position at the medical group at Royal Air Force Lakenheath, a plush assignment in the UK. Prior to his move to Lakenheath, Hilton served as the chief of urology at the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, the DoD's largest overseas hospital. I don't know how you spent your 4th of July weekend in 2020, but it was the first time restrictions eased in Okinawa and we were permitted to go off base for leisure activities. We could be unmasked outdoors, but we were advised to mask up around others even if outdoors. Indoor activities remained strictly off limits. We used the slice of freedom to visit a botanical garden with 2 friends from our COVID bubble. It was easily 100 degrees with 90% humidity, but it felt so good to see something other than our 4 walls. It is the happiest I've ever been while sweating so heavily. An unsanctioned July 4th beach rave with UDP personnel that broke quarantine to attend kicked off a new wave of COVID on the island, and restrictions returned like a heavy curtain. That doesn't seem to have been the case for Air Force personnel stationed at Lakenheath. Hilton and his medical colleagues all lived near one another, and they celebrated American independence from Britain, their host nation, with a series of parties at their homes. At one of these 4th of July parties hosted by an enlisted member of the unit, 53-year-old Hilton got a little too loose and started to slur his words. He didn't quite stumble, but he wasn't 100% in control of his body. The following day, Sunday, Hilton returned to the house to hang out with his friend. While he was there, he asked where everyone else was and learned they were upstairs. He traveled up the stairs and heard chatter coming from one of the rooms, so he opened the door and saw someone we'll refer to as Emily lying under a blanket, talking with her cousin on a video call. Emily introduced Hilton to her cousin, then Hilton lifted the blanket, inquiring if Emily was naked underneath. Emily did not consent to Hilton lifting the covers or attempting to view her naked body. Fortunately, Emily was clothed. She reported that Hilton climbed atop her in that bedroom and that she twice kicked him off the bed before she left the bedroom entirely. She told prosecutors that Hilton chased her down the stairs, trying to swat away her phone. The following month, August, Hilton and his wife planned a visit to London, a 2-hour drive from Lakenheath. They arranged to have a colleague's daughter watch their dogs during their visit. We'll refer to Hilton's colleague, his OR nurse, as Julia, and her 20-year-old daughter as Monica. Hilton picked up Monica around 11 a.m. on Friday, August 28th, and drove her back to the Hilton residence to get her settled with the dogs. A half-hour later, Hilton and his wife set out, and I'm assuming they didn't drive themselves, because the couple returned intoxicated at approximately 3 the next morning. Monica didn't drive, so she stayed in their guest room instead of finding another way home in the dead of night. At about 9:30 a.m., Monica went to the living room downstairs to scroll through her phone. Hilton joined her and turned the conversation towards Monica's love life. He asked her about a certain man, inquiring if they were dating. Monica said they were not, and Hilton responded, quote, "Good, because I've always been jealous, because even talking to you and thinking about you gets me hard." Naturally, the comment made Monica uncomfortable, and she told Hilton she did not want to talk about that. Hilton inquired whether Monica, the 20-year-old he'd just creeped on, would give him a hug. When she declined, he said, "Come on, it's just a hug." I'll pause briefly to note that Monica reported Hilton had previously cupped her butt while hugging her. Her mother, Julia, reported the same happened to her on no less than 3 separate occasions. In spite of that reported history, Monica relented and hugged Hilton. Hilton, who made it a 20-year-old's job to comfort him at his big age of 53 when he felt uncomfortable after making inappropriate sexual comments to her, also revealed that he was a liar, because when she relented and hugged him, Hilton turned and began kissing and sucking on her neck. He pushed her back, pinning her on the couch, and continued over her protests. Then Hilton ordered Monica to take off her clothing. When she did not comply, he raised his voice and demanded it again. Monica described his face as bearing the most terrifying look she had ever seen, so she complied with his order. Hilton proceeded to perform oral sex on Monica against her will, and when he heard his wife begin descending the stairs, he picked up Monica's clothing and threw them at her. He told her to get dressed. When his wife arrived and asked what was going on, Hilton candidly explained, "Fucking." As we can imagine, this upset his wife and set off a fight. When Hilton left the room, his wife told Monica that she would drive her home. In the car, she told Monica that it didn't matter that Hilton was the instigator, that Monica needed to learn how to say no. It's not clear whether she confronted her own husband about learning to accept the word no. The following day, Sunday, Hilton went to Monica's family's home. He didn't knock before opening the door and entering. He saw Monica standing at the kitchen counter and, apparently feeling no shame, approached her to pay her the $40 for dog sitting. They spoke briefly, although the two don't agree as to what the conversation was, and then Hilton left. Hilton said he apologized for what he later contended was a consensual sexual encounter, and asked Monica to keep the details between them. On Saturday, October 3rd, the social events continued. Hilton's wife held a girls' night at their shared home. The attendees included several members of Hilton's unit, including Julia, Monica's mother. Hilton got drunk while they were over, not with them, but in their general orbit. And it's not clear what, if anything, Monica shared with Julia prior to the girls' night. But we do know that Monica didn't report the assault to law enforcement until November 2020. She testified that she hesitated because she was afraid no one would believe her. It's not clear in the opinion why, but by December 2021, Hilton had been reassigned to the chapel as a special projects manager. I say it's not clear because I can't tell if he was transferred like Epps from episode 12 because of his misconduct. But were I to hazard a guess, I would assume that was the case, primarily because it doesn't make much sense to put a urological surgeon on chapel project management duty. For better or worse, unlike the OR, it gave Hilton the flexibility to work from home. On the morning of December 1st, he went into the office, the chapel, for a staff meeting. After the meeting, he went home to telework. When he took his lunch break, he and his wife dined and drank together. His first sergeant called him before the end of the workday and asked him to come back. He had some legal documents that Hilton needed to sign. Recognizing that he had consumed alcohol, Hilton made the responsible choice and advised the first sergeant that his wife would drive him. That does raise the question, of course, of just how much they drink together if she was okay to drive and Hilton was not. When he arrived, Hilton signed the documents and explained that he had had 2 glasses of wine with lunch. He was subsequently ordered to provide a blood sample for testing that showed Hilton had a BAC of .138. Hilton faced general court-martial at Ramstein Air Base in Germany in an effort to broaden the pool of potential panel members. He elected to plead guilty to 1 specification of being drunk on duty, 1 specification of unlawful entry, and 3 specifications of conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman. One of those specifications of conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman was for the language he directed at Monica prior to the sexual assault and for kissing her neck during the creepy "I won't do anything" hug. The other 2 related to being drunk around subordinates. It's probably worth noting that pleading to that specification about his conduct with Monica might influence what evidence that the government could introduce for the sexual assault charge. As you may have surmised, Hilton elected to take his remaining charges to contested court-martial. That court-martial took approximately 2 weeks. During the government's case, 4 different women testified that he touched them inappropriately in social settings. His defense counsel described him as aggressively friendly and not very good with boundaries, but not dangerous. And I would offer that not being good at boundaries, not being willing to accept no as an answer and a complete sentence, is dangerous. At the court-martial's conclusion, the panel convicted him of an additional specification of conduct unbecoming and 1 specification of sexual assault. He was acquitted of 1 specification of conduct unbecoming, 5 specifications of abusive sexual contact, 2 specifications of battery upon a child under 16 years old, related to allegedly physically disciplining his then 11-year-old son for not doing his homework, 1 specification of unlawful entry, and 1 specification of pandering. If you, like me, thought the commercial sex piece, that pandering specification, came out of left field, Hilton was alleged to have offered money to one of his subordinate airmen in order to have sex with the airman's wife. The panel seems to have agreed that the interaction was in jest. With all of these convictions, Hilton faced a maximum exposure of 35 years in prison. The government argued 7 years would be an appropriate sentence, and defense counsel advocated for a range between 11 and 14 months, or basically time served. On July 13, 2024, the military judge sentenced Hilton to confinement for 40 months, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, dismissal from the Air Force, and a reprimand. He received credit for approximately 15 months of confinement, and as a consequence of his conviction, will have to register as a sex offender. By all accounts, he is likely to lose his medical license. On appeal, Hilton alleged a speedy trial violation, challenged the legal and factual sufficiency for his panel convictions, alleged the military judge erred by allowing Julia, his OR nurse, to be present in the courtroom during her daughter, Monica's, testimony, and challenged how the panel was instructed on the law. On its own, the Air Force Court of Criminal Appeals ordered the parties to brief whether Hilton's plea to the specifications of conduct unbecoming for being drunk in the presence of subordinates was provident. If an appellate court flags an issue that they're concerned about, they can order briefing on that issue just to make sure an accused gets a fair shake. It's another safeguard in the justice toolbox. The court, without supplemental briefing, also considered a sixth potential error, whether Hilton suffered unreasonable delay on the appellate clock. The court didn't write on the issue of a speedy trial, the decision to allow Julia to remain in the courtroom, and the panel instructions. Instead, they simply concluded those issues didn't warrant relief. The AFCCA determined Hilton's convictions, the convictions he challenged for their factual and legal sufficiency, were both factually and legally sufficient. Even though they raised the issue of the appellate clock sua sponte, they concluded there was no error that materially prejudiced Hilton. But that fifth issue, the issue of whether it was provident for Hilton to plead for those specifications related to being drunk around subordinates, is where the AFCCA got hung up. They concluded his plea was improvident and reassessed his sentence. In his providence inquiry for those drunk around subordinate offenses, the military judge advised Hilton of the elements of the offense. The judge stated that Hilton was drunk in the presence of subordinate members of the 48th Medical Group on diverse occasions. That includes the slurring in his speech at the 4th of July party, but it also includes the time his wife had the girls over and he walked past after having a few drinks. By just skimming the introduction to the opinion, it's not clear which conduct lined up to the different specifications of unbecoming conduct, so I bristled slightly at the idea that the AFCCA decided that Hilton made an improvident plea. But when I dug in and got to the part about the girls' night that Hilton wandered through or past, the AFCCA decision became a lot more clear. Social circles run small overseas, and Hilton was, by all accounts, staying out of the way while his wife socialized. As for the 4th of July, if episode 13, the Witt case, taught us anything, it's that the 4th of July is no better than a full moon, and not everyone behaves. It actually seems to be a pattern of misbehavior. But I do think it's pretty widely accepted as normal to partake in adult libations on the 4th. When the judge made further inquiries into his drunkenness, Hilton clarified that he believed his speech was intelligible, but perhaps not as crisp as it normally would be. He agreed that he slurred his words and that he imbibed enough to meet the definition of drunk. He shared that he wasn't stumbling, but his balance was impaired. He confirmed he was drunk in the presence of his colleagues, and that his colleagues' reactions helped inform his opinion that he was drunk on that 4th of July. He acknowledged that it was a bad look for him and for any commissioned officer. The judge made similar inquiries into the girls' night, learning who was there and whether Hilton viewed being drunk a room over as unbecoming. He stated that he did. The AFCCA considered the record of his convictions and determined the judge abused their discretion when they accepted Hilton's guilty plea for conduct unbecoming as it related to being drunk around subordinates. They explained that these incidents of being drunk around subordinates at unofficial social events didn't rise to the serious level required by the definition of conduct unbecoming. They teased out those facts as recounted by Hilton and deemed them insufficient to sustain a conviction for conduct unbecoming. But they did want to make clear, they were not making a blanket statement that being drunk around subordinates would never rise to the level of being conduct unbecoming. Tossing out that conviction, the AFCCA conducted a sentence reassessment themselves, in lieu of sending it back to the trial court. They determined that the offense they set aside was not central to the case. The gravamen of the criminal conduct was the sexual assault, with the additions of lifting the blanket off Emily to see if she was naked without her consent, and being drunk on duty. With those realities in mind, the AFCCA concluded Hilton would have still received at least 40 months confinement, absent the offense they dismissed. He would have still been dismissed as a matter of law because of the sexual assault conviction. They did disapprove the adjudged reprimand, but otherwise imposed the same sentence Hilton received at court-martial. Given the amount of credit he received for time served, and what I presume is good behavior credit, I would anticipate that Hilton is either out or soon to be released from custody. Before I close out today, I'll share that the Court of Appeal for the Armed Forces recently affirmed Brinkman-Coronel's conviction. For more details about that case, perhaps to prepare yourself to dive into the CAF opinion, give episode 38 a listen. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it. I invite you to submit case suggestions and feedback to conductunbecomingpod@gmail.com or on conductunbecomingpod.com. Join me next time when we tackle a case so not nice, the NMCCA addressed it twice. Until then, take care. Conduct Unbecoming is a podcast where I get to talk about interesting crimes and cases that involve U.S. military service members. I research, write, and produce the podcast myself. The opinions expressed are my own, and perhaps it's obvious. Conduct Unbecoming is not approved, authorized, or endorsed by the Department of Defense.